I'm Yumiko Ono, Managing Editor of the Wall Street Journal's Japanese language website. Today, I'm honored to be hosting the Wall Street Journal's The Big Interview with Dr. Yong Kim, President of the World Bank. We will be exploring a question that's on everybody's mind, clearly, but which is so difficult to answer. What will it take to restore growth and spread prosperity in times of crisis? The Big Interview is an in-depth conversation the Journal has had with CEOs of global companies and world leaders. Sometimes the guests come into the Journal's office and sit in comfy armchairs in a relaxed atmosphere, and they talk about big topics. Well, today, our guest seems to be sitting in a comfy white chair, but also in front of a distinguished audience in a spectacular hall like this. The moderator today will be Jacob Schlesinger, Tokyo Bureau Chief of the Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones Newswires. Dr. Kim's appointment has been watched closely for a number of reasons. Dr. Kim's background is not as an economist or policymaker, but he's the first president of the World Bank with background in public health. He was formerly president of Dartmouth College and worked on defeating public health threats such as HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis in developing countries. He's also the first president of the World Bank that is of Asian descent. He was born in South Korea and moved to the US with his family when he was 5 years old. There are also some facts I'd like to share with you that have been gleaned from the pages of the Wall Street Journal about Dr. Kim. First of all, he is known for his analytical style. He, quote, digs into data like a data geek to get the information that he's seeking. At Dartmouth, for example, he was successful in reducing the financial deficit of the school without cutting any academic programs. He's also very loyal. When he was president of Dartmouth, he wore a green tie every day, even to the White House dinner. And today, I see he also has a green tie on, even now. He's also a jock. President Obama said that Dr. Kim was quarterback of the football team in high school, point guard of the basketball team, and has a 5 handicap in golf. The president joked that he was rather resentful of the last item. And we know that Dr. Kim has a sense of humor. Anyone who has watched Dr. Kim appear in the Dartmouth Idol Finals video last year as a, quote, space rapper singing Time of My Life will know that what a good singer and dancer he is. There's a digital component to this event. It will be streamed on WSJ Live, and you can also follow the conversation via Twitter. You can also post your questions if you use the hashtag #BigInterview, it's one word. But for those of you in the audience today, you'll also get a chance to ask questions in the good old-fashioned way by raising your hand. Well, without much ado, I'd like to turn the stage over to Dr. Kim and Mr. Schlesinger. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Yumiko, for that introduction, and thank you all for coming today to have the sort of show inside the sausage factory and watch a real live interview taking place. And thank you for making the time. As Yumiko mentioned, you are the first president of the World Bank to have come into the job, having actually had extensive hands-on experience working with impoverished populations in the developing world. You have enthusiastically embraced the World Bank's mission, the slogan, our dream is a world free of poverty, to the point where no longer, even though you are wearing a green tie, is it a Dartmouth tie, it's a World Bank tie. And if you look very closely at the fine print, Dr. Kim has stitched into the tie, or had stitched in that slogan, our dream is a world free of poverty. And I want to talk about that and make sure we get plenty of time to talk about those issues today. But, as I'm sure you know, unfortunately, poverty is not at the top of the global economic agenda these days. It's hard to get attention, let alone resources, for the problems of the developing world at a time when the developed world is having significant problems of its own. So let's start there and then work our way to some of the other classic World Bank issues. Tell us how you view the global economy right now. How bad is it? What are the risks of another recession?
Well, you know, we're all watching this very, very carefully, and we've been participating in a lot of different analyses, and there's no question all of the expectations of growth have been scaled back. And this is a huge concern at the World Bank especially, because we're watching especially how the impact of the slowdown in global growth, the recession and the events that date back to 2008, we are especially looking at how the impact on the poor. Now, one of the good news stories is that over the last 5 to 10 years, a lot of the global growth has been happening in developing countries. You know, Africa has enjoyed a 5% growth rate. Latin America has had high growth rates, and they've also rebounded fairly quickly. It's not been an even recovery. There are some countries that have rebounded more quickly, but the recovery after the 2008 crisis was very strong. So our major concern is to ensure that all the gains that we've seen from the growth of the last 5 to 10 years are not wiped out by the crisis. We're watching very carefully. We're trying to make the point that focusing on poverty in these times is not a question of, look, we're busy, why do you want us to focus on charity? We don't see it as charity. We see the investment in both the inputs, things like health, education, social protection programs, and also focusing specifically on how to make the private sector more dynamic and more inviting of investment, and even in developing countries. We think that those two tasks are the same for everyone. Everyone has got to look at their public expenditures and say, these are the things that are really helping people. These are the things that are providing the foundation for growth, especially in the private sector. And they've got to look hard at the rules and regulations in the private sector. We have done extensive work on how countries can make their private sectors more welcoming of investment. That is a task for everyone. And investments in the developing country are really investments, we think, in future growth.
Okay, well, thank you for that overview, and we'll get back to that. But again, focusing on Europe, as you say, the emerging economies have grown incredibly well, but as we've seen in Asia, China, which has been an engine of growth, is now really slowing down significantly because of Europe's problems. So you had, in fact, said at one point that it is of the extreme urgency that European countries take all necessary measures to ensure stability. Do you think they're doing that right now? Is Europe doing enough?
Well, a lot of things that are really encouraging. I think the emergence of the ESM, the discussions that are happening, I think there are a lot of encouraging signs. I think we're on the right track. It's slower than any of us would like, but it strikes me that there have been actions taken recently that have improved the stability. Now, the task of getting back on the track to growth, it goes back to what I said earlier. Every country has to look at their public expenditures. They've got to look at their business environment, and if all the countries will focus on those two issues and focus on those two issues in a way that will bring about quick change, I think we can get back on the path to growth.
I wanted to pick up on a point that you raised earlier which was, you say, the dangers to progress. And as you noted, you shortly after you became president, you went and spoke at the Brookings Institution and made a number of interesting comments. But one, I think you made a point of noting, and I quote, that the last decade has been very good for many developing countries. And went on to say that this decade of achievement definitely inspires optimism for the next phase of our development work. A couple questions I wanted to ask about that. One is, how can you really be optimistic for a next phase when there's so much uncertainty about global growth? And just to talk a little bit more about the issue you raised, which is what are the dangers to not only losing the gains that you've seen in the developing world over the last 5 or 10 years, but possibly wiping all of them out?
So on the issue of optimism, I've worked in some of the most difficult settings. I've worked in prisons in Siberia, I've worked in squatter settlements in Peru, I've worked in rural Haiti. And one of the things you learn when you're a development worker is if you have access to resources, if you're coming in from a situation of relative power and going into settings like the ones that I walk into, if you walk into those settings with pessimism and cynicism, that's just deadly for poor people. In these kinds of situations, when you're in a position of power, when you do have resources, I really believe that optimism is a moral choice. You've got to fundamentally believe that good things can happen. And I'm very fortunate because I've seen good things happen. I've seen incredible things happen, like the scaling up of HIV treatment in Africa. So many really smart people said that that was impossible. I've seen us build treatment programs for drug-resistant tuberculosis in the prisons of Siberia. Again, everyone said that was not possible. And the stories, many of them are here today. The stories that you hear just give you confidence. And the other source of my optimism is that I was born in Korea, in a country that when I was born, almost all development specialists agreed that it was quote-unquote a basket case. There's no way, they said, that Korea could develop. Development is related to how much Western influence you have. Korea is mired in Confucian ideology. There's just no way that it's going to grow. And then some 20 years later, they turned around and said, the secret to Korea's growth was Confucianism, right? So you have to be careful. I think there's, I hope that the lesson is that we should never be so immodest ever again to say that a country is a basket case. I think there's hope for every country, and I feel that that's my job. We're not going to be quixotic about the global economy. We're very honest about our projections for growth, but my experience has taught me that optimism is warranted.